Hi everybody, Trina from Respiratory. I just wanted to review those tanks that we were talking about. So both of these are E-cylinders, and that's just a description of the size. There are also H-cylinders that stand about as tall as I am, and those are also called bulk tanks. But we're talking about the personal portable E-cylinders, and they are identical here in the sense that they are the same size. The type that say Airgas here, Inteleax, these are the new tanks that the hospital's gotten with a regulator on top, and regulator, just like the term regulate, it's going to determine how much oxygen is being used. It does that with a digital readout comparing how much oxygen is left in the tank and being utilized at what liter flow, which is how fast it's coming out. It gives you a digital readout of how much time you would have left on this tank. So these are super nice. Bellin rents these, and so we have to be sure that these particular tanks with the handle built in, the digital readout, these cannot leave the hospital because once they leave, they're not insured. So that's when we will deliver a patient tank that's owned by Bellin Home Care on behalf of the home care system so that they don't have to come to the hospital, deliver a tank for transport, and then go to the patient's house. So this is, again, an E-cylinder. Now, under this tank, there is a stem that this regulator is covering. Here we see that same stem, but we need to actually add the regulator. So when RT is told to deliver a tank, we will bring the stem tank, and then we will use a wrench, if you can see that. We need to crack the tank, so crack it open. Make sure there's no dust, anything, because we wouldn't want the patient to breathe that in. Then we're gonna look where this lines up, and we'll get that on the tank. So now we'll be adding the regulator, and instead of a digital readout, we're gonna have one with this pressure gauge. Now, I'm gonna make sure that this gauge is, the regulator is good and tight. Okay, so this tank is considered closed. I have not opened the valve. Now I'm gonna open or crack the tank. You're gonna hear a thump, okay? That little gauge, the readout went from 0 all the way up to 2200. That's a full tank. Then if I'm going to turn the tank on, the flow, I will turn the dial to whatever liter flow we need to use for transport. Now, best practice tells us that it is okay to leave a tank open as long as it's not running if we're going to be using it in the next few hours. I think the miscommunication has come in where a lot of our traveling staff or even RTs in general from larger facilities, we are taught to open the tank to make sure that everything is connected correctly and there's no leaks, and then to close it again. I know our CNAs are not taught to check. So let's say I close this, okay, I opened it, and now I'm gonna close it. It still looks full. It reads out full until I bleed out the extra pressure, the flow. So if I turn this on, do you hear it come down? Now it's bled out, which means there's no extra pressure in this whole setup, but there's also not oxygen flowing because the tank is not open. So that is, in comparison, the two types of tanks. So any person leaving the hospital needs to bring their own O2 tank, or we have to provide the Bellin Home Care tanks versus the hospital rented digital readout tanks. Hopefully this is helpful, and if anybody has any other questions, let me know. I can make videos for everything.